Great trip.
Today, at our first work session, I have asked Jason Gaston to tell us what's happening right now, and he has agreed to give us some info.
Well, in the interest of time,
You got your lip in the fire,
yes.
which is not standing behind our nice new podium too.
Well, if you want me to, I'll stand up there.
We just want to show it off.
Again, this is the first presentation at the first work session that we've had in a while, so I'm the guinea pig tonight.
Yes, you are.
Glad everyone's
thank
here, and obviously, I think this format lends itself to a degree of informality. So if anybody has any questions, please, just speak up in the audience and let me know. Probably one of the biggest things that we've done this past month in public relations is roll out the new district app. How many in here have downloaded the app to their smartphone or their device? Okay. School Messenger did that for us free of charge as part of the package that we have with them. We've got a great relationship, and I think they did a quality job. It's fairly basic starting out, but we look to build on it as time goes on. Checking with the developer yesterday, we've had 2,200 Apple Store downloads and almost 800 Google Play downloads, which I think which speaks highly of our community engagement, that it's still relatively new. We've not had a lot of promotion just yet, and we've still had that level of download to the product. For those of you who don't have it, you'll notice that it features links to CMP, transportation, sports scores, latest news, iNow, PayPams. In fact, those last two items seem to be the most popular. I did a survey with parents who had downloaded this, and they appreciated the links to PayPams and iNow perhaps more than anything. So we're proud to offer that feature for them.
Now, I have a question.
Yes.
Under Google Play, how is it listed? You look up just Hoover Schools?
You
Or?
should be able to type in Hoover City Schools in both of the stores, and it'll come up. And it's free. So we, I don't know if we've met since the Finley banquet, which was March 20th, and that was very successful. Of course, I engage a lot with the Finley Committee for Character Education to put that on. Several of you were there. We think it was a big success honoring the 3 Finley Award winners and all the grade level winners from across the district. So we had nearly 850 people that we served that night, and a lot of rubber chicken on plates, but we digested it and got through the night, and it was good. And then April 2nd was our teacher recognition luncheon, which every year has become a tradition for Hoover City Schools. We honor the Teachers of the Year for all 17 schools, and the JSU Teacher Hall of Fame nominees for all 17 schools. So getting the feedback from the principals, the teachers, they feel really appreciative of this effort, coming together and having a few hours away from the classroom, from their schools, and to be formally recognized. So it's always a good thing to walk away from. But other than that, just working on continuous updates to the website and some other things, training the webmasters. We're wrapping up the school year here in a few weeks. I always survey the webmasters, work with Mr. Phillips and Dr. Dodson on that to gauge their interest in serving again for the next school year, to make sure that we have the right people in place to manage the school websites.
Yes, that's important.
So, any questions from anybody?
Thank you so much for
All right.
being our guinea pig. We
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thank you.
Can I interject something real quickly to the Finley banquet? I know that most of you don't know this, but massive amount of time that Jason and Louise put in on organizing that. It goes off without a hitch, and but that doesn't happen by accident. So I really want to thank them because you make us look so good. And we
Well,
appreciate it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because Louise is instrumental
Louise
in a lot of
and
this.
Jason.
Right, exactly.
And it was not Livingston.
Well, no, yeah, actually, the food at Cabo Grand Center is very, very nice. It's got food and over too, Yeah, the food there is spectacular. The service is first class. We have a great working relationship with that facility. And Louise can speak to the effort that goes into that banquet. She manages the tickets, which is like herding cats, trying to get
Unbelievable.
tickets sold at the school level and organized here at the district level. So, but when it all comes together, it's a lot of fun to see the kids on the stage and see the parents snapping the photos
That's right.
for the character winners. And it's the one night of the year where the entire district comes together under one roof. So it's wonderful.
Very nice.
Thank you.
And thank you. We wanted to talk a little bit tonight about the ACT Aspire, which is the new test that will that we'll be getting next year. And I suppose maybe we should start with Dr. Dodson. Would you like to come up and tell us a little bit about what's happening with ACT?
This is our new, we've been looking forward to this for the last couple of years, knowing this transition was coming with our new English language arts and mathematics standards, and the state transitioning away from the Alabama reading and mathematics test, which was a basic proficiency level test. The ACT Aspire is aligned in a different way. It is actually aligned to the ACT that you all know so well, most of you probably took, the whole idea is to begin as early as third grade to begin determining whether those math and reading literacy skills are there in such a manner to, is a student positioned to be college ready on their trajectory of learning. So it's an opportunity over the course of several years to be able to see where a student is moving in relation to that, where that curve should take them in terms of reaching that college proficiency level in the 11th and 12th grade. We've had the Explorer plan in the ACT track with our 8th, 10th, and 11th and 12th graders. We've had that for several years. We were doing that in Hoover before the state adopted that model. And this is a really good opportunity to extend the gains that we got from being able to align our curriculum with that pathway downward into this elementary to middle school transition. So there will be bugs. We know, we've already, poor Dr. Smith, I want to recognize her for having to go through the implementation of this, and having to implement any new assessment for the first time is always a challenge. And this one's given us some new wrinkles because it has both a paper and an online form. And so schools were given the option of which one to do. In this district, we've adopted to do a mixture of both. Our 4th graders are going to take the online version of the test. Our other grade levels 3 and then 5 through 8 will do the paper version. And so this is a good opportunity for us to test those, how our kids do with it. The results this year will not be used for accountability. The state is going to look at the results. It'll actually take us a while to get them back this time, since it is the first time in the country that this test is being given. We expect to get them in September, I think is what they told us. And so it'll be a little while before we get the data back this time around. But again, it will not have any bearings on accountability this year.
The emphasis on technology that we have here in particular, and probably more so in most of the school districts. Can you talk a little bit about the logistical requirements of doing it online versus pencil paper while we show them in the 4th grade?
The issues that we've experienced with some of our online formative testing and looking at other states and areas that have done more intensive online testing things, our own internal structure here in Hoover can handle anything that can be thrown at it right now. It's what happens when the tests get back to the companies and their servers, where the weak points have been in prior efforts to do this. Brian Phillips and his team has been very responsive in all of the tests that we've done in terms of looking at what's happening to the bandwidth within our network. If we start seeing a slowdown and we start seeing students dropped off the system, very first thing we do is see what's happening inside our own world. And almost universally, it's not in our area, it's choking at some other point outside. So the state has learned from that. They've got a very elaborate system set up for this spring. Unfortunately, it's given Dr. Smith more headaches, because what they've asked us to do is schedule only a certain number of kids testing on a certain day. So she's very carefully laid out, even with those fourth grade groups, so that we can make sure we don't have too many kids hitting the ACT server at the same time. We also have a caching server set up on this side of the firewall, and what that means is that a lot of the content, the pictures and the diagrams, those kind of things that would slow down the internet transition, instead of sending those pictures and diagrams to every individual student, those will already be on our side of the firewall saved, so that when a student gets to that question, the image will appear, but it's not having to go through the internet connection to get that picture. So they're hoping that that will help with the speed issues. So we wanted to do it with an entire class level, so that all those students' results could be compared to each other, but we didn't want to overcommit in that area, so that we didn't, whatever the capacity issues were going to be, that we could know we were able to handle it.
I understood it to be a maximum of 60 kids at one time at the test out of one school or school district.
Is that right?
Because of-
That was, yeah, back weeks ago, they changed it up a little bit, and the caching server eliminates most of that, because then it just turns into internal traffic, and we're gig house to house, so it's not a problem. And the good thing is, if it does get to that number, with the caching server, it caches all those results here locally, and then when the connection's restored, it goes out.
And then, though we have a lot of devices, it's not a matter of devices, it's a matter of labs versus individual devices. It can't be
It is.
done individually.
Right now, the test has to be taken on a computer, and they're saying that'll be fixed by next year, so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, but
We're ahead of it.
Did anyone hear the report yesterday on NPR about the Aspire? It was not all rosy.
No.
Anything new is not rosy.
And it's very interesting to hear these comments here, because that was some of the major concerns that the nation, and I guess the world, is having with the Aspire part, is the online capabilities of being able to do that, or everybody else not being able to do that. So,
It is, and the two other testing systems that are being done throughout the country right now, Smarter Balance and Parka, are experiencing the same issues. It's everybody has tried to design their test to be delivered online, because that's a much more economical model, but also it's an adaptive test model. When you have a printed test, the downside of that is every student is going to have to work through the same set of questions and problems every time. What an adaptive test can do in the technology arena is, once I've missed this particular type of fraction problem 3 times, it knows that I can't do that. So it's not going to keep giving me those kind of questions. It'll go on to something else, or it'll give me another way, maybe at a simpler level, to show what I do know. But the test can be adaptive in that context. You can do some things in terms of accommodations. More of our special needs students will actually be taking the online version at other grade levels, because we can do those accommodations for those kids in the online setting that couldn't be done in the paper setting. So,
Which is correct.
but it's buggy. Someone's going to have to. There's no way to test thousands, tens of thousands of kids across the state, and Alabama's not the only state doing it, but it's only a few states that are using the Aspire this spring. So at least it's not the whole country hitting it at one time. But the only way they're going to know if their systems and servers work is when everybody gets on there and does it.
Wow.
So,
Ron, I just read an update from the State School Board Association on the last board meeting. They talked about accountability, they talked about this first year, they expect lower results, clearly because they aren't, it's really not a very good indicator of much. And yet, I kept looking closely at what Vice says, and he talks about school districts and how they perform from an accountability perspective, maybe over a 2-3 year period of accumulated data. But it almost sounds, he doesn't say this, but he doesn't necessarily directly imply this, but he does not shut the door on it, and that is to say, for high-performing school districts versus low-performing school districts, maybe there's a need to realign resources to bring the lower schools up to the higher level of performance. Is that your takeaway early on?
early on, there's some real good things in the new accountability structure, and of course, it's still a little fluid. But there's some things that I really like about it in terms of how it's measuring and the goals that it's setting. I like the fact that schools are going to have their own performance goals instead of being held to a number for the whole state. So even the schools within our district will have targets that are based on their own data, not an arbitrary number for everybody. I think that's much more, that recognizes the unique differences and needs of each community that represents each school. I think some of the weaknesses are in the way that it calculates the gap data. It's going to make a high achieving district that has students that struggle. It is going to make them stand out in that group more. And that's an issue that we have faced even under the old system. When you don't want to, I don't know if you ever heard of the Texas Miracle, but one of the reasons that Texas got a lot of recognition about 15, 20 years ago as a model of education was because they had closed the achievement gap. Well, the way they closed the achievement gap was they took the test that they administered in the state of Texas, and you have a certain percent of the questions on that test that are always a more difficult level of question. And most of the kids are not expected to get those right. What if you take the difficult level, or those difficult questions, and you make those even more difficult? Well, a lot of the kids weren't going to get those right anyway, but the top kids are now not even going to get those right. So what happens to your top scores? They come down. And so they closed the achievement gap by, this basically stayed the same, and then the top came down. So that's one way to close the achievement gap, but that's not what we want. That's not what we're aiming for. Our struggle is to reach down, pull up. So we certainly don't want to do anything to deter our top kids from doing as well as they can possibly do, but we want to provide those supports to go down. I think that will be a tweak that will have to come, that we'll continue to ask for and push for, is that districts aren't punished for having success.
We've traditionally, got a lot of questions, I guess. We've traditionally done, I would say, not graded, perhaps poorly in the early grades, standardized testing. And with Tammy and Cindy, the whole notion of formative assessments is really going to lead us, I hope, to a level of competency, particularly with struggling learners, that we've never seen before, or haven't seen in recent years. Can you comment on that? Because, I mean, you just said that the test itself is going to be a much more challenging test, and it's going to be a very, very difficult test relative to what in our community was before.
That is, and I think one of the biggest challenges we've had is no one has seen this test yet. We've seen a few practice problems that were released, and but that really hasn't been our focus. It's been, and I really like the message that Tammy and Cindy both have shared universally as they've gone out in the schools, which is teach the standards, teach the standards, teach the standards. These are very challenging standards, so it shouldn't be a surprise that the assessment that goes with it is going to be a more challenging assessment. And we don't really know what the questions are going to look like all the way through. We don't know how long it's going to take. This is going to be a new experience for our kids and our teachers. But what we have to have faith in is we've worked very hard to understand what these standards are. We worked very hard to ensure that we have the best resources in place to help the kids get there. We focused very heavily this year on consistent and a powerful implementation of what we have. We've sought better resources. We're beginning to reshape our technology focus and take it to another level in terms of where that can go to support curriculum. All of these things we have to have faith in terms of, is that going to prepare the kids for this test? We hope so, but it won't. But yes, part of that is the assessments that we have had that we gave at the beginning of this year. We repeated those same assessments in January. That was all about checking in and having some not to single out anybody or any kid, but to better understand where the kids are, find out where those differences are in terms of our gaps, and ensure that we can get some wood on those fires before we get to this time of the year in mid to late April, when it's time to put everybody to the test. So formative feedback is all about, it's not about publishing a set of test results. It's not about a scoreboard. It's about knowing how you're doing at the end of the first quarter, knowing how you're doing at halftime, having an opportunity to go in the locker room, coach the kids up, talk about what they've done well, what they need to work on, and then come back out in the second half and play an even better game. So that's where I hope it's really had an effect this year, is just helping us focus on, we know how the day-to-day instruction goes, and I think our teachers are very good in terms of checking in with kids and knowing where they are. And you can tell when Johnny's broken up with Mary, and all the things that go on with that on a day-to-day basis. But sometimes we just have to stop and say, but where are we in regard to these external standards? I hope these tools are helping to do that.
Well, one more thing, in managing expectations, we had a District 5 meeting over at Midfield Elementary School, and the lady, I forget her name, at the board, who was actually in charge of assessment, well, really the accountability and how this whole thing's going to unfold. At the end, I asked her a question, I said, how do you account for school districts that are very successful but have a high rate of transiency? Kids come in here maybe say 2, 3 years, come in 2 levels behind, stay 2 years, 3 years, and they're gone. You get this constant revolving door. I mean, and all we got were really crickets. Hadn't really thought of that. And so in terms of managing expectations for us relative to that situation we have to deal with, unlike some of our peer districts close by, it's going to be interesting.
It is. But I think that's where the formative data is all the more important. We won't have those kids typically for a very long period of time. So we may only get 1 or 2 test cycles with them. The sooner that we can find out where their struggles are and be able to determine whether we're helping them or not, the better I think we can serve those individual kids.
Arnie, question?
Yes, back in 1963, under a subcontract from the U.S. Navy for training at Great Lakes Naval Station, I received a subcontract to write training materials using a combination of Skinnerian and branching methodology, which is exactly what we're talking about doing here with computers. So the military has had a lot of experience with this kind of small increment of teaching, testing, branching back as necessary, or moving ahead. And computers certainly will make that far, far easier. I'm glad to see that it's taken a couple of generations to get to our level.
Very good.
So military intelligence is really a good thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
We have some sample reports that we can prepare for you next time if you want to
Okay.
see kind of what the reports are supposed to look like in this. That might be
That
helpful
might
to
be
you.
nice, yeah.
And
I've
so
not
we'll
seen
work
it.
on having that together for you next time.
Okay. Tammy?
Ron, I just wanted to add, I mean, I think, you know, when you think about formative, it's we have reports, but I think one of the key things that's come out of this are conversations that Cindy and I have been able to have. I mean, I'll just give you a few examples of things that have come forth from this. For example, I know of one place where, based on some formative data, that a principal just asked one teacher to be a buddy teacher to another teacher, and that created this great collaboration, and one started helping the other with some peer coaching and some things like that, and that was a result of really looking at this data. And another thing that very much excites me that has come out of this is I've had more than one conversation with teachers about saying, how do we better serve our high kids? Because when you look at formative data and you look at student growth, that honestly, those are the children oftentimes that have truly been left behind. And so they're looking at these gains reports and they're doing fabulous jobs, these teachers are, but they're like, we need to really strategize and think about how do we, you know, push these higher kids to even a higher level. So I think some really great, I don't know that I can show you a piece of paper and show you a data point and a data chart, but I think that there's been some really rich, powerful discussions that have begun as a result of looking at this in a very formative way.
Kind of like the PLC.
Yes. And I think we will see gains of that when we see then our real standardized tests that really are these data points. I mean, I can't promise, but I feel certain that we're going to see gains from that.
That's great. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks,
So
thank you,
help.
Ron. We appreciate it very much. And we'll look forward to that test next year. I have been working with the State School Board Association for about a week and a half, maybe two. And with Susan Salter and Sally Howell especially. And we're going to implement the superintendent's evaluation. I'm going to do a 360 evaluation. And, that will include, of course, all the board members and all the principals. It will include HPTC. It will include all the department head, employees. It's going to cover, there's going to be 40-something people. But basically, I'm going to get everything. Actually, I'm not going to. Ms. White is going to get everything sent out May the 5th. And I'm going to ask that the deadline be May the 23rd. That will have return envelopes, postage paid, returned envelopes. And the evaluation, the person doing the evaluation will simply put the evaluation in the return envelope, and it will be sent directly to Susan Salter at the AASB. So it will go straight to the state's School Board Association, thank you. And they will do all the calculations, and then on June the 9th, Susan Salter and I will present the findings, the results of the evaluation to the board. And so that's kind of my timeline. And
It's the superintendent's evaluation, correct?
yes it is. And I just wanted everybody to know that.
I think it's important to clarify. I would assume that outside of the board, all the external people who will be participating in this survey are really providing input, not an evaluation.
That's correct.
Evaluation is our responsibility.
That's correct. We will get input from all. And of course the board's evaluation will carry much more weight than anything else, which makes sense. And so we'll have all of that wrapped up on June 9th.
So other stakeholders outside of the board, it's not necessarily an evaluation, but
Well,
comments?
it's an evaluation document, yes, it is.
Okay.
They don't get the comprehensive document. They get their piece of it, right?
It is, it would not have, there would be sections that would not deal with them, so that it wouldn't be on their area. You know what I mean? It's only gonna be questions that deal with them, and then, questions that they know nothing about or that has nothing to do with them would not be included on their evaluation. So that's what it all means by there will be just input, from stakeholders.
Now, have we done a 360 with Mr. Craig before?
We have
Because I
not.
don't think we have.
We have not. This is new.
Okay.
This is new.
It's
But-
being used across the state, is my understanding.
Well, it is. There are several using that, and I just thought it would be a good idea.
And it's really across the board, it's used with administrators, et cetera, it's just kind of the new.
That's
thing.
correct. That's correct.
Parts
It
to
is.
the first, is there a 360 component?
It's the ballot.
Ballet
Yeah.
component.
Or who all gets that? Do teachers, all teachers get that, or is it just?
No,
administrators?
it's, right now it's at principals. It's all in the structuring stage. This is kind of our new thing out in evaluation as we've shifted from old evaluation models to new evaluation models. And it's fairly comprehensive, thus the 360, but it's also comprehensive in scope and sequence, as in you being used as a tool at all levels.
Right.
So it's an interesting process.
I think so too.
Great thing.
I think so
Better
too.
than happy, come on.
Yes, hello.
How long has it been used in the schools and other systems?
A couple of years,
Okay.
I think a couple, I don't know longer than that, I may be wrong, but I know of 2 years. That's what I know of, yeah.
Will Mr. Craig have a part in this evaluation, or everything is evaluating him?
Everything is evaluating him.
So he does not participate in this, correct?
That's correct.
Did you call AASB and just ask for a recommendation? This is what they recommended?
I've just been
for
talking
Hoover?
to him for a couple of weeks about that I wanted to do this right, and that I wanted to know the latest out there, and that I was really seeking knowledge, and from that, this evolved. But I was mainly, at beginning phone call was just truly seeking knowledge.
So in the other systems, they have been satisfied with it?
They have. Well, you know, I only know of a few that I
Right.
have talked with.
But they're
They were-
positive?
And they were, yes. Yeah, the ones I've talked with are pleased. But I certainly didn't talk to all of them.
Right.
I just did a few. So,
Well, I think that the fact that the State School Board Association endorses it and
That's
supports
correct.
it and logistically can make it happen, you know, as a third party, a disinterested third party, if you will, is really important to the whole process.
I think so too.
Thanks for doing that.
You're so welcome. I'm glad to get it going. Okay, let's see, Mr. Gray, do you have anything?
Just, when you want to go through the agenda items.
Yes, let's go through the agenda items, please. Thank you. What? Yes, starting at 4?
Yes, thanks,
Yeah, right. So, any discussions on any of the action items?
Got one? Mike, imagine that. James,
Sir.
a lot of retirements.
Yes, sir.
Is that a good thing? I mean, not a good thing, but is that a manageable thing?
Ms. Green and I are going to be talking and seeing how we're going to do that. And, you know, I've got some ideas and been brainstorming with my staff, and need to sit down and run them through her, and then to y'all on how we're going to be able to do that. You know, they've been good employees. One lady, Ms. Jax, has driven at Rocky Ridge since the day she started working for Hoover, and has put in 25 years, and is going to spend some time with some grandchildren. So,
So you're not in a panic in terms of managing the challenge there?
not today, but 6 August may be a little bit different.
Yeah, get back to him in August and see what he says. Anything else? Anybody has questions? Business action.
You have been to the Veterans Day program at Green Valley. Always appreciate the musical presentation there, and that's Miss Mary Shaw, and she is on the retirement list, and we hate to see that. But
Yes.
she's not to necessarily call somebody out, we usually get in trouble for that. But noticed that before, but she's just been an exceptional
Yes.
music teacher in the district for many years.
We did speak last board meeting, so I won't be, redundant in the conversation. And possibly in the May board meeting, we'll talk about mid-year financial review.
That's
Is that
correct.
understood?
Ms. Ante will present
Okay.
in May, and we decided that was like the halfway point,
Yes.
and it was logical, and so we're trying to be logical. And so she will do that in May. Yes, she will do that in May.
I have a question for Mary to ask it now, or just question to read.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Ms. Bill, page 3, I sent an email and I did not get a response from you, which means that you may not have received that. Number 3, under transfer, is that legit?
Yes. Oh, I didn't know if you wanted, I didn't know you wanted a response. Yes.
You thought she was just going, oh,
I
golly
just
gee,
thought,
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, yours is
Dr.
pretty hard.
Jernigan did some heavy recruiting.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on
I think
there.
Dr. Jernigan's behind most of that.
Yeah, they're trying to really build that physics department, yeah.
Wow. that's-
It was another interesting little thing to me was the K teacher to AP middle school. That's a pretty interesting transition. It's not a giant leap in mankind.
Which one was that, Earl?
There's a kindergarten teacher at Club Park, going to assistant principal there.
But see, that's been in the works for a long time.
Oh, I know, but I mean, that's just a quantum leap for.
Exactly.
Item 5 on page 3,
I'm sorry, okay.
second 5, not first 5.
Yeah, and we will have 2 new assistant principals tonight. We'll have two, is that, am I correct? 2 new assistant principals tonight.
There's a error on that.
On number 5?
Get it fixed by then.
Yeah, that should say, Greystone.
Exactly.
I'm not up there.
Yeah, and it probably, I think when this was typed in, the person who typed, they're so used to associating Kathy Wheaton with Berry Middle. So that's a typo. That should be Greystone.
Oh, the one that we're talking about.
Oh, I see.
Page 3, item 5 at the bottom,
That's
should be
right.
Greystone.
We just put her back where she was, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Well, that makes better sense, I'm thinking, you better have your game face on, you're gonna go from kindergarten to middle school assistant principal.
Okay.
So that's why we have work sessions to correct errors.
Thank you.
You get a prize for
Well, we've just
catching
corrected
You
that
didn't even
one.
realize you caught anything, did you? Mary,
No.
you're paying
I just,
attention, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Glad it wasn't me that's going to middle school assistant principal.
It's funny, you read it 3 or 4 times, but I proved it, but I didn't see that.
That's okay. We've got it fixed.
Well, I don't think Greystone Elementary is gonna let go of Dr. Wheaton, so.
That's true.
They keep asking, they said, she's not gonna retire, is she? And I said, I don't think so. She's in this big challenge at the end of her career, but she's
Yeah.
doing a bang-up job over there.
Very much enjoying it.
She tell you that?
She has said that, yeah.
I talked to her, Edie.
No, in words, in real words.
We kid around about it.
No, we've heard her.
Do we need to do anything
Yeah,
with that,
that's
Ms.
what,
Hill, before the board meeting?
she's gonna see if Carolyn's still here.
Okay,
Okay, anything else?
that was an honest mistake.
Anything else? Okay. Mr. Craig, would you like to do the,
We got the financial statements next.
yeah, anything with the financial?
Kathy, you're gonna kind of give a state of the union mid-year, is that kind of what?
Just a little update,
Okay,
this week and two.
okay. Please remind me, why is February?
So high in expenditures.
Yes.
We make all our debt service payments in February for the
Okay.
whole year.
For the entire
Yeah,
year?
they go into an escrow account, and the payout is twice a year, but we have to fund the whole thing at the beginning.
Okay.
So that's why it jumps up both years, and it jumped up more this year than last year because the debt schedule went up
Went
by
up.
3 million.
Gotcha.
I'm just glad you didn't say it was cold and the power bill went up.
That too.
Yeah, we meant to say that.
No, it didn't, even if it did, it didn't go up that much. It was one and done with us with making that payment. It's kind of nice though.
We would complain about the float, but it's not enough to.
Not enough left to worry about, and we don't have to worry about making a second payment.
Won't be long, you'll be paying the bank.
And you kind of do with all the things.
Okay, anything else? With the financials? Are we good? Okay.
The next item is a fee-based transportation proposal. You have a memorandum before you. What try to do here was summarize the process we've gone through, including our dialogue back and forth with the United States Justice Department. We have arrived at what we think is a mutually agreeable fee structure. That is on page 2 of the memorandum. What we, over the course of the conversations and the dialogue, we sought to essentially put ourselves in a position to where we could support the total cost of the program with underlying state funding, in addition to fees, in addition to local funding. So you kind of think of it as a kind of a three-pronged funding system. You see the appropriate fees. You see that they are tiered. They're tiered by non-poverty riders, National School Lunch Program, qualified reduced riders. There is a discounted fee structure, and as well as the additional discount that would apply to National School Lunch qualified free riders. Over the course of our conversations, we also looked at and wanted to provide discounts for multiple ridership, and you can see that it's kind of discounted vertically by school lunch status and horizontally by number of riders. And a little bit of discussion about that 3+ category. Basically, that would be the max. So if you have 4 student riders, pay essentially that price, or 5 or 6. So it's a little confusing, but that was the intention, and that was the discussion with the Justice Department folks as well. What you would be considering tonight essentially is the fee structure. We'd be asking you to approve that for planning purposes so that we can continue on to the next phases, kind of the nuts and bolts planning. There are also some legal filings that Mr. Sweeney can discuss. But we're very pleased that we've reached a solution at this point. And I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Mr. Craig, this is for the 2014-2015 school year, correct?
It is.
From the beginning of the process and all the way through to implementation, still be in contact with the Justice Department?
We will. One of the things the Justice Department, as well as we wanted to do, was put a plan in place to monitor various impacts that would be potential, and part of that is submitting to them how we would do that. And that would really, I think, would be the kind of first order of business.
With your permission, could I just share with you my overview? It was really a 3-part process. Our first challenge was to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Justice Department that we were facing a real fiscal downslide. After we did that, then, and Andy did a marvelous job when he flew to Washington to just make sure they understood just how serious it was. Secondly, the dialogue was to address that downslide. We want to do it in an effective and equitable manner. So the Justice Department's reaction, and they have been very thorough and very professional in all of our dialogue with this. Their reaction was, all right, let's see how it plays out. That's what their reaction was. You have a downslide. You say you're going to have a plan that is effective in addressing transportation needs in an equitable manner. Now, we want to see how it plays out over the next year. To do that, what's really important to them and to us is to have a methodology and process to monitor what's happening, all aspects of it, the efficiency of the transportation, the ridership, how we're addressing the transportation challenges for all of our students. They want to know at the outset, how are you going to monitor that, so we will know if we're doing a good job, and they will know. Secondly, they want us to use that process of evaluation to collect data and provide them on an ongoing dialogue all of next year with the data that our monitoring process has been designed to collect in a meaningful way. So we'll have an ongoing dialogue with them. Now, at this stage, what we're doing is to begin the process to design the monitoring methodology, and to the extent at this early stage to look at the mechanics of setting up bus routes, bus stops, those early things that have to be tweaked later on with ridership and so forth. But right now, there are some concrete, as Andy said, nuts and bolts things that can be done, which will be necessary when we petition the United States District Court for approval. Because what you will do is adopt a plan for planning purposes, but it's not effective until the United States District Court approves it. And to get the approval of the court, we have to have enough flesh on the bones so the court could look at it and say, you've got a good process, you're going to monitor it, and you're going to communicate about it, and we hope hope the court will say, we like what y'all are doing. But the monitoring process is real important to the Justice Department and the collection of data. Andy, is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. So to clarify, in essence, you would be considering for approval the fee structure and the underlying process that we would go through that Mr. Sweeney outlined.
But the Justice Department has seen this fee structure, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question, and then I have a statement, please.
Okay.
The question, does it affect our current bus transportation system, department, so to speak?
In terms of number of drivers?
Well, yes, that. And maybe it's too early to ask that question. Will there be a big change in our current transportation system, the way it currently operates? In other words, will we possibly have more drivers if more people jump on board, or could we possibly have less drivers if less people choose to pay the fee?
I mean, it's a constant.
Okay.
It's a constant now adjustment to your ridership. Some folks ride the bus to varying degrees. I would say, James, it's a constant adjustment.
We add some track stops all the time. We have students that ride, particularly seasonal because of sports and other activities after school. When those events stop, we had a challenge this morning where we had a couple of young men who hadn't been riding because of their sports, and so the driver didn't go by their house because they hadn't been riding, and they told him that they let him know, and they didn't, and Mom called us that they're no longer in that activity, so pick them up in the morning, and so we do that all the time.
I was just curious because we've not charged a fee before, but again, I'm probably asking a question that we don't know the answer to yet.
Well, I think that would be part of the monitoring.
Okay.
But your question is really operational. You're asking, is there gonna be more of something or less of something? And our response to the Justice Department has always been, we want to provide effective transportation for our students. So the answer to your question operationally, I don't think we envision more or less, but we'll have to adjust depending on the ridership as to the actual implementation. What we've discussed is how we can provide an effective transportation system and still begin the process to have fiscal integrity in looking at our downslide financially, which was so important at the very outset of this whole process. So operationally, I'm hoping there's not a big change,
Right.
Ms. Frazier.
Arnie, I think you had a
And
question.
then my statement.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Sorry. And I'm sure you all can attest to this also, but at district and state level meetings, there are other school districts that I feel certain will follow suit if everything works the way we are hoping that it does.
I hope you're saying suit as in plain bridge rather than suit
I
as
don't
in
play cards,
litigation.
Mr. Sweeney, I'm just saying, various school districts, school board members will walk up, and I'm sure the guys have gotten this, I'm sure Paulette has
I have.
received this too. But they walk up and, you know, you can't answer that question yet. It's been in a process this entire time. But there have been other school districts throughout the state. I'll mention Mobile and I'll mention Huntsville because I've had conversations with those board members. But they're very much interested in how this is gonna play out.
I think that's
Because
accurate.
they too are looking for ways to cut, and they too are interested in doing the same exact thing that Hoover is considering. So for me as a school board member, I am thrilled that we are on the forefront leading the challenge with this.
I think what you said is very accurate.
I think you're right. Yes, Arnie?
First of all, we have no idea what this matrix contains within the boxes. We know the outline of the matrix, but we don't know the detail. Two requests. One would be to print some of these copies between this work session and the start of the public meeting, so that there can be a few minutes for us to take a look at it so that you can get some public comment on it. And, but in the meantime, if we could get an idea of some of the numbers and some of the percentages of breakdown by those different classes of students, it would be very helpful. Oh, and the one other thing would be that public comment take place before any vote take place. Thank you.
I'll read out the rates.
Okay.
And just a little closer to the microphone, please.
I'm sorry, what?
No, for superintendent.
Sir,
One student rider
is this on?
per month, $40.75. Equivalent per day is $2.26. National school lunch qualified reduced rider, one rider per month, $20.38. $1.13 per day. One student rider, national school lunch program qualified free rider, $14.88 per month, 83 cents per day. Two student riders, non-poverty rider, per rider per month, $28.53. Per rider per day, $1.59. Still in the two student rider column, National School Lunch Program qualified reduced rider, $14.27. 80 cents per day is the equivalent per day rate. Still in two student rider category, reduced riders, National School Lunch qualified free rider, $10.42 per month, 58 cents per day per rider. The 3+, which is the last category, the per month rate for non-poverty riders is $21.40 per month, $1.19 per day per rider. National School Lunch Program qualified reduced rider, $10.70 per month. The equivalent per day per rider for that is 59 cents. National School Lunch Program qualified free rider, still in the 3+ student ridership category. Free ridership, $7.82 per month, 43 cents per day.
Are you saying that those are for up to 3 and the 4th one is free?
I'm saying that last category is 3+ riders. It would be the same, for
So
example.
you're giving us a per person rate.
That's
Per
correct.
month, per rider.
Okay, so you still have to pay for the 4th and 5th?
No, no, per month, per rider. The 3+ category is, you pay the same if you have 4, 5,
Caps at
6, 7.
Yeah, if you had, if you had
Pay for
3
two,
or you
right.
had 5,
No,
you
so
would
you
pay
gave a
that.
per person, so I just wanted to
She said
clarify
it's
that.
just the 4%.
And I'm saying no.
And in response to the request for that matrix to be made available, it's my understanding you're going to do that this afternoon?
Pending board approval, Mr. Sweeney? Pending board approval?
Well, this is just informational at this point. It'll be an action item at your board meeting, so,
Tonight,
tonight,
okay.
if I understand correctly. So, I mean, y'all probably will have as many thoughts about studying this as anybody else, but since the recommendation is for you to adopt this for planning purposes, knowing that it's going to go to the United States District Court, there'll be plenty of time for y'all to ask further questions. But I think Andy Craig and the staff that have been working on this have put endless hours and adjustments that evolved through dialogue over the last 3 months. And so I think what Andy is recommending is our best effort, isn't it, Andy? So I think the dialogue to understand it is certainly appropriate, but it's a work that I think Mr. Craig will indicate to you that is our best effort, and it's what's been put in the lap of the Justice Department, and the Justice Department says they're willing to see how it plays out.
Yes, sir.
One more question. Within developing these figures, I'm sure you've done some projections on the low, most likely and high side as to the revenue that this would bring in. And also, is this 9 months or 10 months?
10 months.
10 months.
Yeah, and we used a ridership assumption that most closely related to our head count that we took back in the fall.
And that produced approximately how much worth of revenue with this model?
There's multiple assumptions in that question. Percentage of ridership, like I said, we used the FTE ridership assumption that most closely related to our regular ed student head count, which was about probably 6,400 students. We used that assumption, and then we applied basically the percentages of related to the individual categories to that.
So again, that produced some sort of a revenue figure.
The target was about 2.6 on an ongoing basis. Depending on the ridership levels, you're probably talking about, if it all played out the way the assumptions are lined, you're probably talking about probably 2 million, 2.1.
Thank you.
If ridership increased, then there would be additional revenue, is that right?
Yeah, additional costs as well.
Well, right. Well, of course, on a bus, you have some fixed cost. So if you have 20 on there, maybe 30 instead of 20, you're going to, there would be an increase. Now, Mr. Craig, has there been any change in the amount of funding from the state?
The legislative session finalized. The main driver for the increase in our state allocation was the increase in PHIP. PHIP went from, I think, $714 per month per employee to $780. So whatever that is,
Right.
8-9% increase. Typically when that happens, the incremental costs associated with that are less than the incremental revenues in the state formula. And that at the eyeball, at this point, within transportation, that looks like what happened.
So no, it's
Incremental costs exceeded the incremental revenues within that transportation.
so the amount you're receiving for buses is the same.
No, it's more, but the incremental costs associated with the PHIP probably exceed what the increment was.
I see.
And I'm saying that from an eyeball standpoint, I haven't
Right.
put any pencil to that.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Mr. Presley, I think you thought that maybe the state at some point might increase funding. I think you mentioned that to me, but that didn't materialize.
Not specifically transportation that I know of.
Right.
It did go up, but not by much. Right.
Well, just remember to vote early and vote off.
Well, the interesting thing about it is, I mean, if you listen to closely what he said, they didn't reimburse the PHIP increase as an employee benefit, if you will. So what they did, they give the school district more, use transportation more money, but a very slight amount more money. But when you have a lot of additional teacher units that are unfunded by the state to begin with,
Yeah, guess what?
you really take a hit.
Right.
Right. On the net.
That's what happens to us. Yeah.
Mhm.
Trish, you had a question?
I have a question, I'm sorry, I had to step out of the room. Does this fee structure include fees for extracurricular and, for football players and those who will be utilizing the buses as well?
Those costs weren't in the cost base, and I separated those out.
So those costs will be borne by the athletic
Those
program
costs
that's?
were not in the cost base.
Those,
That we spread over the assumed ridership.
okay, but the cost for those services, it might not have been in the cost base that you sent to the Department of Justice, but is that cost base gonna be covered by those riders? Or is that cost base gonna be covered by our tax dollars?
I took the costs associated with extracurriculars and threw it aside.
Right, and stop right
I took the
there.
costs that were left and spread over the ridership.
Okay, but those thrown aside costs, what are those? And are the people who are going to be using those buses and extracurriculars going to be paying those costs?
I mean, that's outside the scope of what we're talking about here, and we can certainly discuss fees associated with that.
Well, I mean, that,
they're
when
borne
y'all
kind of
first,
in different respects already.
but when you first proposed this, that was part of the proposal was, and yeah, we'll probably, I mean, I've had conversations with board members who said, yeah, my child who plays a sport might have to pay a fee to ride the bus. So I wonder, was that part of this, or you're just saying that's just off the table for now?
I'm saying I did not include it in the cost base, so it's not included in
It would be
the fee
really
analysis.
details,
So we're
wouldn't
not
it?
trying to recover extracurricular costs through fees.
And I think what she's asking is, I get that too. I think what she's asking is, let's take, for example, we go to Playview Temple. We take school buses and not the venture travel, whatever. Is the cost for those buses borne by kids who are on the bus playing football? Or
I can
is
answer
it-
that.
There's
I can
As
answer
part of
it.
the program
You can.
cost?
I can answer it.
I can answer that.
All three of my girls cheered all the way through. At the beginning, we use football season, for instance. In the spring and summertime, we have to sell ads. Okay, that's a big portion of the funding that we get with our various booster clubs.
Right.
There have been years when we've done very well, and the booster club would pay for our ride to wherever. There have been other years when fundraising was not so great, and we as parents would pay a fee at the beginning of the year to cover our kids' transportation during the year.
And that might have happened to you in certain particular instances, but I don't know that that's a policy across the district. I know that we've been cited in previous monitoring reports because our extracurricular and athletic departments in particular have not reimbursed the transportation department for the costs that they incur. And that's why I'm wondering, is anything gonna change there, or is that just not even part of this?
Well,
The state makes you, and the state formula's changed at various times, but they make you back out the cost of extracurriculars, and it's a formula. James,
No, I'm serious.
Is here.
what is it? Something, X amount of mile plus the personnel costs associated, and they make you reclassify those costs outside of regular, I mean, they used to, back in the good old days when transportation funding was more of a reimbursement kind of arrangement, that was where that was born. And I don't think they cited us for not paying back. They cited us because we didn't make that reclass of cost correct. I believe, I'm just operating on recollection, but it's a separation of the costs associated with extracurriculars out of the cost base that at one point was for reimbursement. Again, with the subject that you have in front of you, extracurricular costs are excluded from that cost base that was spread over that assumed ridership.
And we have no plans to look at fees, because, I mean, the deal was the
I think
buses cost money.
I can't say that we don't have plans to look at fees, but I can tell you tonight, this is what's on the table.
So we'll charge kids to get to school, but not to go to,
I didn't say that.
okay.
Will there be a way for parents who want to pay for one way instead of round trip?
And that's, I
Because
think that's in the nuts and bolts piece tonight. We have a fee structure that we have worked with the Justice Department to agree upon to an extent, and the details of that are yet to be studied.
Do you have, anticipate that you'd be able to choose to ride some months and not others?
I would anticipate, yes. You would not have to pay for a year or a semester, I would think.
Monthly.
Pay about a month, maybe?
Yeah, or, you know, I suspect that year one will be a lower tech implementation than maybe second semester or year two, as we would make adjustments. But I think, you know, as flexible as you can make the fee arrangement, I think the better everybody would be in terms of being able to put kids in seats.
Yeah, everybody gets focused on the transportation aspect and the cost per student, and that's, you know, that's reasonable. But the ancillary possibilities here are profound if you back far enough away from it to look at the picture holistically. As an example, everybody probably knows my wife's an educator, and though they don't transport at Vestavia, she was in Inverness. Shelby County certainly transports like crazy. Probably the most, in her opinion, I won't speak for her, in my opinion, probably the most serious risk posed to a student in a school district is riding the stinking bus. You don't know who gets on the bus all the time. You don't know by name. The drivers change. You don't know who gets off. You don't know who's waiting at the bus stop when they get off. You don't know if a little kindergartner who's sitting there in August going to school for the first time in their life, sound asleep in the back seat of the bus till you get home and get back to the school. So there's a whole host of risks there. So all that being said is, what if you had some kind of biometric thing? Let me finish. What if you had some kind of biometric way to track who gets on the bus by name, who gets off the bus by name? If you don't have the card, you don't have the criteria to get on there, then you don't get on the doggone bus. So that is a positive benefit from a security aspect, positive benefit from a management, child management perspective. And you know, it's just, I don't know if we're gonna do that, but when you start thinking about the possibilities, the upside possibilities, other than just, you know, we're gonna charge somebody anywhere from 83 cents to $1.50 a day, there are all kinds of possibilities.
If you're talking about the
school district's liability, yes, that's probably the most true statement. But if you're talking about the safety of children getting back and forth to school, I think national studies have shown that the safest way for the majority of kids to get to school is a school bus. So yes, there's a chance that something could happen on the bus, but not as much of a chance as if every one of those kids is in private cars or walking on unsafe
Well, we're
streets.
beyond that point. I mean, that's all this interesting
But
discussion.
there are kids that are not going to ride the bus because you're charging them.
There are kids who are gonna ride the bus because you're gonna make it safer for
No.
them. Yes, there are.
I doubt
People
that.
right now who don't have access to the bus because they won't let their kids ride the bus because they're afraid for their children.
I have not met a single
Well, I'll be
person
glad
who
to give
has
you
that
some names.
concern.
I agree, her facts are correct.
Well,
And I mean, we have.
I mean, there are
we're afraid of-
anecdotes, you know. Hoover school bus was in an accident yesterday. How many children were hurt on the bus?
how many kids been killed on the way to school at that stadium?
How many children were hurt on that
I
bus?
don't have any idea.
0.
Wait, what are the children afraid of, Mr. Cooper? When you say they're afraid to get on the bus, what are they afraid of?
Behavior on the bus.
Behavior on the bus.
Most of the bullying takes place on the bus. All you have to do is ask people who ride the bus, Trish.
Okay, that's not gonna stop just because you're having people pay for it.
We're not-
That won't stop.
Oh my
And I'll tell
This
you
is
right
a
now, as a
wonderful
parent.
compromise. This is a wonderful, you know, when we first went to Spain Park High School, excuse me one second. When we first went to Spain Park High School, and it was standing room only, when we were in the original discussions of eliminating transportation, most everybody that got up to the podium said, we'll pay for the bus, just keep the bus, we'll pay for the buses. Well, guess what? After all of these months that Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Craig, all the time and effort that has gone into this, that was done correctly, by the way, this is a wonderful compromise. We're keeping the buses.
You're not listening to what I'm saying. What he just said was that people don't want their kids on the bus because that's the biggest place that they get bullied. Charging isn't going to change that.
No,
We don't.
if you're that myopic and say, I agree. If you're myopic enough to say that's the only criteria that.
No, but that's what you said.
Hear me out. Again, if you'll back up a little bit and take a more holistic approach, there used to be bus lanes in every bus that the state funded. Why are they not there now? Because the state quit funding them, because they're not funding transportation adequately to begin with. Maybe this allows us to put aides back on the bus, stop some of the schools.
Question?
Okay,
We have a question?
It's more of a comment, thank you.
Okay.
I've had many conversations with the superintendent and others related to this issue, and I know lots of time has been put into it. And, you know, the one thing that I hope will come of it is that during this time of transition, that a very close look is taken at policies, procedures, other aspects, the routes that are being run, how they're being run, the number of students on the bus. You know, I don't get on a bus, but I hear lots of bus stories, and I'm sure you do as well. I'm sure everyone in this room hears bus stories. But I think it's a good opportunity to be mindful of those things. Not that everything can change, but to say during a time of transition, where can we tweak some things to save, you know, financially, you know, to create a safer environment, to possibly look at, is this funding, you know, down the road enough to put an aide on a bus? I think there are possibilities. But along with all of the things that have gone on over the last few months, now that you're moving forward, I mean, I think it's a really good opportunity to just, you know, to put the program, you know, under a microscope, so to speak, in ways that it can be improved from a financial standpoint, from a safety, in all aspects as it relates to students, employees, parents, and community.
Right. Thank you. And I do want to take a small break, you know, if we can, before the board meeting starts. Is that okay with you, Arnie? If we-
No, that's perfectly okay.
Okay, let's do that, because I think everybody needs a break before we start the board meeting.
Right.
So let's do that. Thank you. Thank you. The Hoover Board of Education meeting is now called to order. Would you please stand with me to set the pledge of allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have before you the agenda for today's board meeting. Do you have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. Now we will have a time of recognition. Dr. Juan Dodson, Assistant Superintendent, will announce a state award that one of our schools has received.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. We are very honored, Dr. Jarnigan, for making your way forward. We were very, very pleased to learn last week that Spain Park had been selected as the Alabama nominee for the ACT College and Career Transition Award. An amazing, amazing honor. And if that wasn't nice enough, you literally just got permission to release this today. But we also know now that Spain Park is one of the 4 national finalists for that award at the national level. So,
That's great.
all these goodies you brought back from Montgomery last week. Thank you. Congratulations, Dr.
Congratulations. That's
Jarnigan.
wonderful.
Spain Park High School.
That's wonderful.
You want to shake our hands?
Yes.
Congratulations. That is great. That is truly great.
Surround yourself with good people. Congratulations. Sir? That's right.
Melody Green, Assistant Superintendent, will recognize one of our outstanding candidates.
We all know that academics are important, and that's what we're about. We're about the business of learning, and we certainly are thrilled with this latest honor. But there is a group of people who make the business of learning possible, and these are the people in student support services. People from transportation, people from CMP, our custodians, our clerical staff, and tonight we're honoring someone from our Student Services Department. I'd like Mr. Wayne Smith and his colleagues to come forward, please. Okay, I'm gonna read some good stuff about you. It didn't take long to find.
I'm sure it did.
Mr. Smith was honored as this year's recipient of the Sue Adams Award at the annual Alabama Association of Prevention and Support Services Conference in Mobile on April the 4th. This is a prestigious award. It is named after Dr. Sue Adams, who was a beloved advocate and a longtime director of Prevention and Support Services for the Alabama Department of Education. The Sue Adams Award winner is selected by a vote of his or her peers, members of the AAPASS, and this award honors an individual's passion for his job or her job, knowledge, dedication, and contributions to the prevention of prevention and support services. Basically, what that translates into is a bone-jarring, grinding, day-to-day making it happen, getting kids to school, keeping kids in school, helping parents get their kids in school. And I can think of no better person in this state that does that than Mr. Wayne Smith. So tonight we'd like to present him with a certificate of recognition from Hoover City Schools and tremendous gratitude for all you do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And a special thank you to my staff and the people with whom I work, because they are the ones that really make it happen.
Thank you. And Mr. Lowry is here, and would you come up and be in our picture? Come right here.
That looks like a criminal lineup. Y'all come up a little bit here.
Good. We'll try to look nice up there.
Actually, let's get the whole board to come around front here and surround you guys. That would be a good group shot, because I've never seen you here before.
Everybody
come around.
This is his first board meeting.
It really is, it really is. Come on up. Everybody, you guys stand right here in the middle.
I gave him a lot of power to that. We're happy to have Craig Kelly, our newly appointed board member. And Mr. Kelly will be beginning serving on the board in June. And Mr. Kelly, if you'll stand, please, so that everyone can see you.
Mr. Kelly, you wanna come shake the board's hand?
Okay, moving along. You have the minutes from the regular board meeting of March 17th. Yes, I'm sorry. You have the minutes from the regular board meeting of March 17th, 2014 board meeting. Do you have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The minutes are approved. Now, the personnel report. If you'll peruse that, please. And if you have any questions, Mrs. Veal. And the new items are in bold, is that correct? And we had one correction, and that has been, that we caught at the work session, and that has been corrected on page 3.
Actually have a separate hard copy, I don't think
Yeah, and did everybody get a,
the digital file's not,
Oh, yes,
probably
we
not
did.
updated.
but everybody got a hard copy? Perfect. Any questions for Mrs. Veal? Well, actually, we asked questions in the work session, so we don't need to, I'm assuming. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Personnel report is approved.
Ms. Pearson, do you mind if we let Ms. Swati
Yes.
introduce her
Please.
assistant principal?
Yes, I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Sarah Chisholm, who will be a great sidekick, I know, at Rocky Ridge. We're really looking forward to working with her at Rocky Ridge, and we'll love working with all these people. I can tell you that much too.
Welcome, we're so glad. So glad you're here. Thank you, Bill. The business items are before you. If you'll peruse those, please, and any questions for Mrs. Ante? And as I said, we did most of this in our work session previously, so I believe we're good. Do I have any motion, do I have a motion to approve the business actions?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The business actions are approved. The next action item is the fee-based transportation proposal.
Just a really quick summary, for some folks are not.
All right,
wasn't here
okay.
for the work session. We talked about a particular plan that was discussed with the Department of Justice for a fee-based system. This was something that they didn't so much agree about, but didn't impose as a waiver. It was something that they worked together with Mr. Craig, our superintendent. So the goal from here now is to take the actual plan to the Department of Justice for a final evaluation, so it still has to be approved. Is that
Almost, not exactly.
not exactly?
What the Justice Department said in essence to us was that we accept your assumptions that you've got a real fiscal crisis to address.
Right.
That your plan that you're proposing appears to be effective and equitable, we'll let you have that plan, but we reserve the right to see how it plays out. And in order for them to assess how it plays out, how we implement it, and how it's received, they want, before it's put in place, a methodology and process to monitor what's going on, a commitment from us that we'll collect data based on that, and have an ongoing dialogue as we implement the process. But the Justice Department is one important party of the litigants that come to the United States District Court for approval. So it's not the Justice Department that approves it, it's the United States District Court, but they have an enormous responsibility representing all the citizens to let the court know what they believe is appropriate.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
And all of this, all of our agenda items and everything attached will be on our website as well. So
Everything.
everything will be on there.
Mr. Sweeney, do we have any idea the time frame on this? I mean, if this is scheduled to be implemented for the 14-15 year,
I don't know chapter and verse the response to that, except that we know how time sensitive it is, and Mr. Craig and his staff are already in the planning process, but we didn't come to a final understanding of this until yesterday. So we didn't want to be presumptuous in going forward until we had that. But usually where you don't have opposition to a petition to the court handles it expeditiously. So hopefully we will have a petition ready to present to the court that will show the monitoring process that they're working on, the commitment to collect data, and the matrix that is before the board for adoption tonight. So I think the recommendation that Mr. Craig wants y'all to consider would read something like this: recommend adoption for planning purposes, the fee-based matrix for student transportation as set forth in the memorandum dated April 17, 2014, preliminary to petitioning the United States District Court for approval.
So you've got to have this before you can do that.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's our commitment to the Justice Department. They are committed to see how this plays out,
Got it.
reserving the right to look closely at the monitoring process and the data collected.
Exactly.
Mr. Craig, is that accurate?
Likewise, we are committed to them and to ourselves to put those monitoring aspects in
In
place.
place, right.
Good luck reading it.
I can read it. Okay, so would you like to go from here?
Yeah. You have the recommendation.
Oh, let me read that. Okay, so our recommendation would be,
This is from the superintendent.
that the superintendent recommends the adoption for planning purposes. Based on the matrix for student transportation as set forth in the memorandum that all of you have, dated April 17th, 2014. Preliminary to petitioning the United States District Court for approval. Does everybody understand?
Yes.
Okay, this is the recommendation from our superintendent. So do I have a motion to accept the recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the recommendation is approved. Okay, now we'll move on to the information and report.
Just to supplement what we entered into at the work session with regard to the legislative session and the budget. It is pretty mainly driven by the PF increase. We did have increased units. Those basically are increased units that we had last year for last year's enrollment because the formula operates in arrears. So it's a pretty hefty increase to PF, but it's basically driven by those two items, the PF increase as well as the, we earned an additional 13 teacher units. But again, those are in arrears, so those relate to the growth in enrollment that we had this school year. Other than that, I believe the long surviving instructional support allocation, they're all still zeroed out, I believe, based on where we've been. I think the teacher allocation is $300 per. I think it's 310 maybe. I think well, it was 300 to 310. I believe.
Thank you.
So it's pretty bare bones still. That's all I have.
Not a surprise. Is there, I believe John Lida is here tonight. Is John here?
Hi.
John, I just want to recognize John from our city council. Thank you, John, for being here tonight.
Do you want to mention about the superintendent's evaluation and everything?
Yes, yes. I mentioned in the work session, and I will mention again here tonight, that we're going to implement the superintendent's evaluation that will, I have been working with the State School Board Association, and they're going to be helping with this evaluation. It is a 360 evaluation. We've not done this before. I think it will be good. It is, of course, all the board members. It will be all the principals. It will be community involvement, including HPTC, which is the presidents of the PTAs from all the schools, and it will include all department heads, employees. So it'll be, over 40 people that will be this 360 evaluation. We will send this out May the 5th, and we will ask that it be returned. The deadline will be May the 23rd. And then I will return on June 9th with Susan Salter from the Alabama Association of School Boards to present to the board the results of the evaluation. And so I just wanted all of you to know that that we would be implementing that in May. And we will have the results for you June 9th. Anything else that we mentioned in work session that we need to? Okay. Do we have any public participation tonight? I'll go right ahead on it.
First of all, Arnold Singer. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for a very democratic, small D work session. It was a pleasure to be part of it. I was requested as a courtesy to allow some break between the end of the work session and the beginning of this public session to hold questions or comments that I had. I think I was not the only one who wanted to speak. I am disappointed at this point because we did not get copies of the letter, and there was no discussion ahead of time before the vote. The question I was going to ask was, is there any scholarship situation on a month-by-month basis that is part of this plan? There will be people suffering some undue hardships. And I don't think from what I heard of this matrix that that question was addressed at all. Month-by-month basis, we're not talking anything blanket, but one that has to be justified. Let's say child is attending school, and I'm going to give a really bad situation. For one reason or another, one parent is in the hospital, the other parent is in jail. The kid really wants an education. How is he going to pay for it? He looks forward to that breakfast and lunch that he gets here because that's the only nourishment he's assured of. I heard nothing in the plan that accounts for that. I think a touch of humanity is very important in that area. I'd like to give other people a chance to speak.
Okay.
I have some other comments that are separate from this.
Okay.
Can I be given that opportunity?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sabrina Lewis, Hoover resident. I had a question for Mr. Sweeney. You mentioned two terms that jumped out, Justice Department and litigants. Is the matter at discussion tonight a matter of litigation as we speak? That's my first question. The second question is, will the petition be something that is filed in the Northern District of Alabama?
That's correct. It will be filed, it's part of the ongoing Stout versus Jefferson County Board of Education desegregation case, and it will be filed here. And there are several parties to that litigation in Stout, but we are not anticipating at this point that there will be litigation over this. We're hoping that that won't be the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Singer, Hoover resident and parent. You shared with us the figures, the costs that are being proposed and the structure, and whoever wasn't here for the work session didn't get a chance to hear that. So I'd appreciate in a minute if you could share those numbers with everybody else. I'm also very concerned about the free and reduced lunch kids because those numbers don't sound like a lot to us, but to a kid who really doesn't get food other than at school, imagine how that parent's going to come up with $150 a year, even if you break it down by month. There's not extra money in those people's budgets. I'm really concerned about that. And on the other side of the coin, I know plenty of families who don't qualify for free and reduced lunch who can't afford $400 a year for their kid to get to school. There's a big range of people in those categories. I think there are a lot of people who are like, yes, that's definitely going to be worth it for me. I will pay that money just so I don't have to get in traffic and drive. But there are some people that are really going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place trying to come up with the money one way or the other. So I'm concerned that the numbers are higher than a lot of people thought they might be. And I think that you're going to find that you'll have a pretty wide range of reaction to this, but I think there are a lot of people who are going to be struggling with the idea of this and the fact that we're going to have to wait for district court approval. So this thing can't even be approved, it sounds like, till really pretty close to the school year starts, which is going to make it extra hard for people to plan. So I would love to hear about some way we could help people figure out how they're going to make this work going forward.
She asked for the numbers.
Here's copies for anybody that was not here.
Yeah, if anybody
She
was
said
not in the
was
work
not here,
session, we
didn't
have
hear.
copies, that has the matrix on it.
Mr. Presley
Yeah.
raised that same concern about the critical time path for this, and I think it's appropriate for you to indicate just how sensitive you and the staff are to the question Mr. Presley raised and has just been raised.
Yeah, and the way I understand this process is this will give us the leeway to start that nuts and bolts type planning while those overriding processes are in place. And that's, and Mr. Sweeney and I talked about that just before the meeting, and we believe this would give us that leeway.
We can't control the United States District Court schedule, but it would be an utter disaster to the staff and the students and the parents of students if it wasn't finalized in early summer. Now, that's just our projection, and there's some contingencies we can't control, but we know how time sensitive this is, and we have tried to work as with all possible acceleration to get where we are today.
And we wanted to balance, we didn't want to be presumptuous about the ultimate arrangement that we've gotten to today. So we didn't want to do that either. So we kind of, that was a balance with us, but we want to be able to get started with the mechanics of it going forward.
Yeah, so we'll be able to start implementation, is that correct?
We'll be able to start the planning so that we'll expeditiously be able to file a petition with the United States District Court.
I see, and so that it will,
Right, and the courts have always been very responsive to
Exactly.
time-sensitive matters relating to public education.
I see, that makes sense. Okay, yes, go ahead.
I'm Dan Fulton. I'm a Hoover resident. Mr. Sweeney, I mean, you may have answered my question. I was wanting to know when you felt the court would rule or make its decision. You said early summer sometime, you figure.
That would be my hope,
Oh, I see.
but the court doesn't have the petition yet, and
Right.
we don't know their schedule.
If someone filed a petition opposing this, would that delay the decision?
That would, in fact.
About how much delay do you figure?
It would depend on the nature of the opposition, but usually the courts try to accelerate scheduling where students are involved.
Right, if some petition was filed opposing this, could they make a decision by summer?
I would hope so.
Even so.
I mean, the parties that have standing before the court in Linda Stout are already established.
Right.
Not new parties. And what the Justice Department's position on these matters is enormously important.
Right.
To all the other participants.
Right.
They don't dictate, but they spend the time evaluating matters, and that's why we're encouraged that the Justice Department has said, we're going to let this play to see how it turns out.
And monitor it.
And monitor it.
Right. And so if for some reason they felt it was not playing out well, then I guess they could make another request from the court, is that right?
Well, we'll have an ongoing dialogue with them because we want it to succeed as much as they do.
Right, but you understand there's some horrific hardships being placed on the residents of Hoover. Horrific hardships. And that has to be faced. Now, I want to talk about funding just a moment. Now, I think we're saying, well, it's PHIP's problem. And I would disagree with that.
Disagree with what?
It is PHIP's problem. We have a PHIP problem. We're having to fund PHIP. Health costs are going up. Everybody knows that. PHIP's going to go up. It's probably going to go up some more.
Right.
We have a funding problem. And remember, we have a voting process. We'll have opportunity to decide who we send to Montgomery and who will vote in Montgomery on how the schools will be funded. The buses should be funded 100%. They failed us. So before you send anyone back to Montgomery, remember that person, that representative, that senator going back to Montgomery failed us. Now also, we have, there is the two other sources of possible revenue I can think of is the city of Hoover, Mr. Lyda. My personal opinion is the city must do more. Before I vote for you, Mr. Lyda, I expect to see some of that.
You may not have to.
I know you can't make a promise. Nobody likes taxes, but we want great schools. I mean great schools. We will not accept anything else. We want Hoover to be the leading school district in this state. And then we have the foundation. I would really like to see the foundation do more. There are people, we have people in this city with money to give away. But they have to be motivated. I receive all kinds of literature from UAB, the University of Alabama, and other institutions, the Comprehensive Cancer Center, how they want excellence and they want your money so they can produce that excellence, grants. Maybe some of you go to Sanford, they do a tremendous job on fundraising. My dad's business partner was Joe Griffin. Go to Sanford, there's a Joe Griffin baseball field because he had money to give away. And we have plenty of folks just like that in Hoover. And I think the foundation needs to get some of that money. And so I really think we do have a funding problem, and it's hard to fault the board here or Mr. Craig when that is really the root of the problem. And they're struggling to try to deal with insufficient funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand that, Gianna's on. I understand that what the board voted on today is not guaranteed. But what's going to get out there to the press is that it's going to cost $400 a kid. Because you know, one thing, that's all it takes. It's going to get on Twitter, it's going to cost $400 a kid for people in Hoover to get their kids to school. You know it as well as I do. It's never all the little stuff that goes out there, it's that one thing. This is we're still hearing from people who are leaving Hoover every day because of this. We're hearing from people who said, we don't know how much it's going to cost to send our kids, so we are moving to a place that has free school buses. I understand that you say that you have been trying to move expeditiously. As far as and I'm pretty sure I can speak for a lot of other people, 10 months is not expeditiously when you're talking about transporting our children to school.
Thank you. Mr. Singer, did you want to say a statement before we go?
Thank you. It is time for a change in how we as a community approach the business side of education in Hoover City Schools. Just because things have been done in the past does not mean that they are etched in stone. The question is, how can we deal with the fiscal issues facing Hoover City Schools in a manner that will have the least impact on our children and grandchildren while providing them with an education for life? The following can be done by the board to begin to strengthen the Hoover City Schools' financial health. 1, the board can request that the 2014-2015 school budget be prepared for first reading during the month of July. This presentation would include measures being taken to reduce expenditures for areas that have little or no impact on student education. Examples include bidding for professional services, such as architects and attorneys, as well as a change in the methodology of teacher supplements. 2, request a change in the methodology of the school budget from a planning document to encumbrance accounting for the start of the 2014-2015 school budget. 3, leave enough time for changes based upon the first reading to be incorporated into the budget presented to the board for approval. If the board is not comfortable with the presented budget, it can be rejected. 4, postpone any extension of contracts until at least September. These include the superintendent, the chief financial officer, board attorney, and the outside auditing firm. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next regular board meeting will be on Monday, May the 12th, 2014 at 5:30. We will have a work session. It's 4 o'clock, okay, for y'all? Okay. We'll have a work session on May 12th, Monday, May 12th at 4 o'clock. So the work session will be at 4 o'clock. The board meeting will be at 5:30 on May the 12th. And we are adjourned. Thank you.